The story of Simon of Cyrene is one of unexpected calling and transformation. Simon is mentioned in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke. Each writer gives us a small glimpse into his life. Simon was a foreigner from Cyrene, a thriving Roman province on the north coast of Africa. Cyrene was known for its fertile lands that produced grains, olive oil, wine, figs, apples, and even a rare herb called silphium. It was also a center for science, medicine, and architecture, home to both native converts and Jewish transplants from Jerusalem. Simon had traveled from Cyrene to Jerusalem, perhaps to celebrate the Passover. To the Jews of Jerusalem, he was a stranger, a man from far away. He was simply passing by when chaos erupted in the streets. The Roman soldiers were leading Jesus of Nazareth to his crucifixion. The air was filled with shouting, and the sound of iron striking wood echoed through the city. Before Simon even understood what was happening, his path and his life were forever changed. Mark tells us that a passerby named Simon from Cyrene, the father of Alexander and Rufus, was coming in from the countryside, and the soldiers forced him to carry Jesus' cross. Mark 15:21. Simon had not planned this. He was going in the opposite direction, minding his own business. But that day, he was pulled into the center of the world's greatest story. The cross interrupted his plans. It was a burden he did not see coming, did not expect, and did not want. Yet Simon had no choice. He was forced to carry the cross behind Jesus. Before this moment, Jesus had already endured unspeakable pain. Pilate had sentenced him to death, exchanging him for Barabbas, the murderer and insurrectionist. The soldiers scourged Jesus with whips embedded with iron and bone that tore into his flesh. They mocked him, draped him in a scarlet robe, and pressed a crown of thorns onto his head. "Hail, King of the Jews!" they sneered as they struck him again and again. By the time Simon met Jesus, the Savior was weak and bleeding. The weight of the cross was crushing, so the soldiers forced Simon to take it up and walk beside him. At first, Simon may have been afraid, confused by what was happening. The Bible doesn't tell us his thoughts, but we can imagine his fear. The crosses we bear in life can be like that, unwanted, unexpected, painful. They descend upon us without warning. Grief, loss, sickness, family struggles, loneliness, or financial hardship. Like Simon, we often don't choose our crosses, but what begins as a burden can become the very thing that brings us closer to God. Jesus once said, "If any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way, take up your cross daily, and follow me." Luke 9:23-24. In the first century, the cross wasn't a symbol of burden, it was a symbol of death. To take up the cross meant dying to oneself, dying to pride, to ambition, to self-centeredness. It meant surrendering personal desires for the sake of God's kingdom. Simon lived out those words in the most literal way possible. He picked up Jesus' cross and walked behind him. What began as a physical act became a spiritual awakening. That encounter changed Simon forever. He gave something of his life that day and gained far more. Simon received salvation, and his family became part of the Christian community. Mark's gospel names his sons, Alexander and Rufus, names familiar to the early believers. This tells us Simon's family had become followers of Christ. Through one moment of forced service, an entire household came to faith. When Simon picked up the cross, he thought he was helping a condemned man. But in truth, the condemned man was saving him. Simon's life reminds us that sometimes God interrupts our plans to lead us into his purpose. What feels like a burden can become a blessing. What begins with fear can end in faith. So when life hands us unexpected crosses, when we face pain, loss, or uncertainty, we can remember Simon of Cyrene. He reminds us that to truly follow Jesus means to lay down our own way and walk with him, no matter the cost. Like Simon, we are invited to take up our cross, not as a punishment, but as a path to life. Because when we follow Jesus, even the heaviest cross becomes a road to redemption.